Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. Be seen on WHPR Detroit Live, Comcast Cable Channel 91, on the web at TV33WHPR.com, with the TV33 app, on Roku, Google TV, Apple TV, and on Amazon Fire TV. Act now. Time slots are limited. Sign up today and get a free replay with the purchase of your time slot. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
I plan to stay drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
I pledge to be drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
Good afternoon and welcome to Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and stay tuned. I've got a very special guest, Mr. Ed Sarpolis, that's going to be on the show with me. But before we get started, our call-in numbers, we're live, and our call-in numbers are area code 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, 313-868-4336. Our website is www.tv33WHPR.com, and you're watching us from the awesome cities of Detroit, Michigan, under the auspices of the mayor, Michael Duggan, and the phenomenal city of Highland Park, Michigan, under the auspices of the Honorable Mayor Hubert Yap. Just to do a quick housekeeping real quick, just wanted to make a quick announcement before we join my guest. But I'd like for you to think about, there's a NAACP state convention, or conference rather, and community membership drive that's going to be held. They're holding a community town hall meeting, and this is to reactivate the Highland Park NAACP branch. And it's going to be this Thursday, June the 3rd, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And they're going to have a discussion and talk about steps that they can use to reactivate the branch. So there's going to be a Q&A, so you can get an opportunity to go call in, find out more information. And if you want to get more information about it, you can call 734-506-0676. And they are going to have this through Zoom. I'll post this on my Facebook page, so you can go to my Facebook page and be able to get the link to be able to go and join that. But if you would like to get more information, again, you can call 734-506-0676. And just to give the persons that are going to be involved with chairing this meeting. So again, that's going to be this Thursday, June the 3rd, and it's going to be from 6 p.m. until 7:30. All right. A lot of people realize, too, that there is a important election that's coming up in August, which is the primary, and there's also an election that's coming up in November, and that's going to be the general election. And the question that we're going to, pose to my guest today is, he's a pollster. And he is also the executive director and founder of a company called Target Insight. And what he does is he gets to sample the pulse of the persons in various communities throughout the state. So he takes polls, he talks to people, he asks questions, he sends out, the polling questions, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Our, looking at polls and just what is the importance of polls in today's elections. Today, my special guest, Mr. Ed Sarpolis of Target Insight. Ed, thank you for coming on Expose on
It
this
was my
Sunday.
pleasure, Black. Glad to be back here. As you know, this is my hometown where I was born and raised. It's always good to be in the community.
Well, and let's get started. Why are polls necessary, first of all, when it comes to candidates or people that are interested in finding out more information about candidates?
Well, what's important here, I'll give you a case in point, and I've shared this with you before, is the fact, let's take Garland Gilchrist. He was running against Janet Winfrey 4 years ago for city clerk. At the time when he approached me back in June, in the poll that we took, he was at 2%. Because we did a poll for Garland Gilchrist, we gave him a roadmap by which allowed him to defeat Hester Wheeler in the primary to go on to take on Janice Winfrey in November. And because of the polling allowed him to understand where he was weak, where he was strong, how many people knew him, what the issues were. So he came up short, but the point being, without that poll, he probably would have dropped out of the race. The poll gave him some guidance to show that he had an opportunity despite being so low in the poll back in June.
So what are some of the categories, what is the criteria that you use when you go and do this sample questions that you ask people that you're polling?
Well, first of all, a survey has to be representative of the community. So if you live in East Detroit or West Detroit, you have the sample, whether it's a 400 sample or 500 sample, your portion of the city has to be the proper proportion in the survey of people, okay? Secondly, we're going to be looking to talking to people who are voters, people who most likely, in this particular case, be looking to vote in the primary. So those are very important. We want to talk to people who are going to be voting and represent the community. And now also the fact is that we also check the data all the way to the end. We know that, for example, how many women tend to vote in the primary, or how many men, what's the African-American population. So the poll has to be a reflection of the community. And it's a stratified, means it's across the city, each person has a proportion, and it's random. I don't know who's going to pick up the phone. I don't know who we'll be talking to because it's random, but it's like representative of the whole community. That's the first thing you must look at. Does it represent the people that you're planning on, predicting on what's going to happen, like in this case, the August primary?
So now you do both telephone and mail out the poll?
Well, typically the polls that I've done this last couple of months have been by phone.
Okay.
Mail out take a little bit of time, and a lot of the people, or whether it's organizations like yourself, a news network or a community thing, they don't have time to wait for 2 or 3 weeks. They need to know within a week what the results are. So like I mentioned at Garland Gilchrist 4 years ago, I was able to tell him within 4 days where he was at in the polls, that he needed to hear what he needed to do. Over 70% didn't know who he was, and what our strategy was. Like the polls that I did with Lalona Perlman, that you run with her show, and with other people I've been on WWJ, those took 3 days worth of contacting people, some 400 people that took the time, the 10 to 15 minutes to answer my questions. And now when we do a survey, the questions are basically, do they recognize the person? Okay, do they recognize the name? We'll ask them what issues are important to them. Because recently, in the last month, I did the poll on reparations in the city. It was interesting to find out that 72% of white people in the city believe just as much as the black population that blacks were overly taxed in this last 2010-16 overtaxation. There's agreement on that, and there's be some compensation. So the poll allows me to ask questions of what people are feeling and thinking, and then share those publicly with the news media or my group who I'm working with. I've also done polling for churches. Where do people want what's their service times they want to attend? Where they should have a public meeting. So the poll is designed as an outreach. You can't talk to everybody, but the poll allows the people to get a sense of what the public is feeling.
Okay.
And I've been doing this now since 1972. This is my first business I started as a freshman in college. So yeah, it's been about 49 years, and I'm looking the age. But the point being, I've helped people from Benny Napoleon, Kim Worthy. I've worked for Mayor Coleman Young. I've gone back for a long time, working for quite a few people. As I said, I was born and raised in the city. So for me, it's nice to come back and outreach to the city, and then share what I'm doing back to the people I know in the past and now in the city.
So when you do the sample polling,
Yes.
now do candidates, they contact you and ask you to do a sample poll, or how does that done?
Well, basically, there are some polls that I do for myself.
Okay.
Because basically, I do a lot of radio and talk shows. I do a lot of educational things. Yes, candidates will hire me. Keith Williams, Michigan Black Caucus, hires me. For example, Keith Williams with his Black Caucus was able to, he was the first state caucus in the United States to endorse Joe Biden. He was the first one to get behind Kamala Harris because of the fact from the polling we did amongst black voters, Keith Williams understood the fact that the black community was moving towards Joe Biden. So he was able to beat everybody out statewide as endorsing Biden and supporting Kamala Harris. And some of the polls showed Biden and Kamala Harris, as a matter of fact, over a year and a half out, as most likely the candidates that were going to get through into the end. So I'm able to help people like Keith Williams. What's happening? What's the community at? Because sometimes, how does Keith reach everybody? The poll gives them a sense to take the pulse. And remember, it's a snapshot in time. Things can change, but sometimes where's the mood right now? And that's what the polls are designed to do.
So in the case for like with the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus, and if to find out that would have been, was that a statewide poll?
That was a
you
statewide
did?
poll, yes.
Okay, as opposed to a local.
Right, but we
statewide.
talked to black voters statewide, not just in Detroit, because he represents the caucus is statewide, though it's focused here in Detroit. So it allowed him to give a sense. The other thing that he was able to learn, why this was important, is we're finding that the black community, once they leave the city of Detroit, absorb the politics of the community that they're living in. That's why you heard in this last election, a lot of black males, once they leave the city, become more independent or sometimes Republican. We were able to tell Keith Williams where that's beginning to happen and what age groups, what's going on, and why were they switching, not necessarily switching parties, but being more conservative as they left the city of Detroit.
So when you say you do a, like for, let's say for example, for, let's say senator,
Yes,
where you may have to do a statewide poll,
U.S. Senator, yes.
how then do you decide in terms of say what areas, like you got Macomb, Wayne?
All of them
Oakland?
have to be included.
So how do you do it? Like, do you do a certain percentage
Yes.
of Oakland County voters that you
Yes,
sampled
but
their poll
For
from?
example, like we know that anywhere from, depending on the election, from 10 to 16% of the voting population is African American. So we have to be sure that when we finish the poll, that they represent that 10 to 15% of the voters that we sampled in our results. So it's representative of the community. So Macomb County has its representative sample. Oakland County does. The Upper Peninsula has, for example, Upper Peninsula might be equal to as Oakland County because it's a smaller population. It has to be representative. So no, because otherwise it would be of no value to me, the fact if I polled everybody in Detroit and didn't go to the rest of the state. No, it has to be the whole state. I got started when I remember in college, in fact, I had to buy every phone book in the state of Michigan in my dorm room because I had to draw a sample from all of Michigan. Now I can do it by computer. Back then I had to take a ruler and write down the phone numbers so I could do a survey statewide by the phone. Actually, the girls' dorm was my first phone bank. You know, they like to talk, so they were getting paid to talk.
Now, what are some of the things when you take a poll? What are some of the things that are most important that you find for the candidates that may be running?
Basically, a reality check.
Okay.
For example, like in this poll here, I mean, we have Anthony Adams has been talking for the last year that he's been running and he's working hard. He's the top candidate. But we find, even as of today, or last week when this poll was done, 61% of people in Detroit still really don't know who he is. And so that's reflective in his numbers why Mike Duggan is leading over him, because the fact is that so many people don't know that Anthony Adams is the candidate that is running against Mike Duggan. And that could be because of lack of funding, because of visibility. You know, he's not really been a public figure in the last 4 or 5 years. He's worked for the city, he's done a lot of fine things, he's the city attorney. But the point being, he's not known by everybody. And that's what the poll helps him out. If he was to look at this data, I've got to do some work getting my name recognition, because over the last 30 years in Detroit polling, is that most people who win a seat, whether it's state rep or city council or council member, until about 70% of the people can recognize your name or your face, it's very difficult to win an election. So when I work with candidates, I'm saying is, well, we're still not at that 70% number. 61% means 49% know Anthony Adams, but he's still got to get another 20% gain on his name recognition to be competitive against Mike Duggan.
So primarily then, this is like a toolbox
It is a toolbox.
for a lot of the candidates.
Yes.
As well as the people that may be interested in finding out more about the candidates themselves.
Yes.
Because it's like if you've got a candidate, let's say, now you're looking at percentages when you talk about people that recognize you,
Yes.
people that may want to vote for you
Yes.
or support you in
Yes.
that election.
Yes.
But then you're also looking at people that may support the incumbent
Yes.
or support your opponent.
Opponent, right, and
But
I know that.
Then at the same time, too, you're also looking at the people that are undecided?
Well, that's the important thing. For example, and the other thing besides undecided, what are the soft vote? What I mean, the fact people are willing to move from one candidate to the next. This is, I find, very unique to you, but the fact that more black people support Mike Duggan than the white population in Detroit. It doesn't make sense. We assume that because the white voters be voting for Mike Duggan. That's not the case. They don't necessarily like what he's doing, that type of thing. So basically, the poll tells you what are the facts, what is the truth. Okay, and Mike Duggan still has that strong senior base in Detroit from the polls. Younger people are beginning to move away from Duggan because they may not like his policy. So if I'm a candidate, I'm looking at where is Mike Duggan weak? Is he speaking to the issues? And I'm sure Mike Duggan's doing polling too, because all of a sudden you see him talking about issues like, why is he talking about that issue? Because he's got his own polls going on. For example, the city's going to get probably up to $800 million coming to the city through the Biden procedure, $400 million coming early. Well, Mike Duggan has already taken ownership of that because he wants to know, say, it's his money. No, it's not his money, but he's claimed he knows how to spend it because he knows his competitors are going to try to take advantage of that and saying he's going to get money, but he doesn't know what he's doing. So everybody does polling. The question is the type of poll and who is doing that. So the important for a candidate is polling can help you. It doesn't predict you're necessarily going to win or lose, but it gives you some guidance.
So the main thing is that this is something that you're doing to help the candidates,
yes,
not to hurt the candidates,
no,
not to hinder the candidates. You're doing this to help the candidates as well as to help the people in that district to make an empirical decision about who they would like to support.
Well, for example, I know in many races, like for example, like I'm getting calls because the public release of the fact is, oh, I know I didn't know my candidate was weak. Now I'm going to probably give him some money or her some money because they know now they need some support. And in some cases, some people are waiting to see if their candidate is for real. You know, for example, the thing is that you're willing to help a candidate, but if they're not going to have a legitimate shot or movement, the fact you may don't know what to do. So the poll can help if people use the data properly. Okay, I do poll to help people. So most people know, like when you call me, I answer your phone, correct? Well, people call me all the time. What was my data? What am I looking at? And I share that information because I'm not working for any particular candidate. My job is the fact this is what I enjoy doing for a living. I've helped people from Detroit hospitals and Children's Center. You know, people looking. For example, we found out when I was working with Detroit Children's Hospital the fact that almost all doctors who deal with symptoms of allergy and that type of stuff work in Oakland County, but most of the elderly problems are in Wayne County. So I could help Joe and Josh was saying, well, this was years ago. It's like, well, you're going to have to attract some doctors to Wayne County because the people who have the need don't have the doctors.
So let's look in terms of say with this poll that you got in terms of say with the candidates that are running for mayor,
yes,
running for city council,
and the council at large and clerk.
Are there any, from looking at your data, looking at the poll that you took, is there anything that could be something that you may have polled that could surprise you in this election? Let's say for the mayoral race or for some of the city council or some of the city council at large races. I mean, is it something that, let's say maybe you've taken polls in the past and the polls may have showed a candidate that was leading by a wide margin
and they flipped.
Exactly. Has that ever happened?
It has.
Who can you give them that, like who that may have happened? Because this is something that's concrete that may have said one thing and then turn out in the general election it was just the opposite.
Well, for example, it was not in this particular marriage with Mike Duggan, but the point I've done another marriage like in Warren, that within 2 weeks the numbers flipped because the mayor took the wrong position, made the wrong statement, made people mad. And those numbers flipped. They come for 2 weeks. Here's another case. This was back in the mid-'90s because this was important. How did the Detroit casinos get to come here into Michigan, into Detroit? Well, I was part of that movement. I was working with the Native American tribes and the Greektown Casino, something like that. 2 weeks out, the ballot back then was for Proposition C. The city had to vote whether or not to accept the thing. The polls showed 2 weeks out that they were going to lose. Okay, and one reason they were going to lose because Mayor Archer was attacking the casinos.
Right.
Well, 2 weeks later, we flipped to 20 points. We won because we knew what the public wanted to know about. So we flipped the vote within 2 weeks. By taking information learned in that poll, the fact is we re-educated them the fact what Mayor Archer was saying was not correct.
Because there were a lot of churches that were in opposition for the casinos.
Correct.
And then I think that as time went on, I think when he won re-election, he was, like you said, he changed his position. Changed. Exactly.
Because the bottom line, the fact we flipped it. Well, this basically it's this. He was coming out. Basically, the movement was the fact is that the money is going to be mismanaged. There's a lot of crime and all that kind of stuff. Well, we found out through our polling, people says there's already crime in the city. Not going to be more crime. And number two, We found in the polling the fact that if the casino was willing to turn over the control of the oversight to Mayor Archer, they'd be 100% for it. So within 2 weeks, they went out by the casino said, in fact, we're going to include the administration to oversight of the money, and the fact we're going to work on the crime. All of a sudden, people says, you solved my problems, and the vote was flipped within 2 weeks.
Yeah, because I think that even with the marijuana proposal,
Yes.
when they were trying to legalize
Yes.
marijuana, that was kind of vacillating back and forth because you see some polls that said that it was going to win, some polls that were saying it was going to lose.
Well, what happened is that actually what's so funny, the fact the biggest supporters of a lot of the initial marijuana stuff was seniors, because they grew up in the 50s and the 60s, and they were token, okay? And the other thing that was very big of the fact is the health perception.
Right.
There's been a growing tendency right now of, yes, you can still get brain damage, you can still get bad lungs from smoking weed, that doesn't change, but there's a big medical help, so that movement is continued on since the 60s and the 70s, that there's been more acceptance to it. And some of the biggest leaders on the marijuana thing in the last 10 years has been amongst conservative Republicans who typically were against it, as you know, even nationally. The ex-speaker of the Congress, he took on lead on that. So it comes down to education. Yes, they were against it. But the other thing, the fact is, as more education comes out there, people understand that it has a place. And does it have a place? It's generally in health and that type of thing. I have a potential son-in-law that we're going to be getting married to soon, that he has such severe migraine headaches. Without a little bit of, the CBD or smoking marijuana, he's in constant headache. So there's a health issue. He's not smoking because he wants to get high.
Right.
There's value. So as public became more educated, that movement against it was changed.
And see, that's one of the things that I'm finding, just like there's polls now. You said something earlier about the candidates sometimes may take their own polls.
Yes.
Now, let's take, for example, the candidates that may take their own poll. Now, they may not poll the same type of individuals that you may poll.
Well, if they
So
don't,
could that be misleading to them, or?
well, first of all,
I mean, because not to cut you off, but it's like you can ask your friends, "Would you support me if I'm running?" Now, your friends are probably going to say yes, but when you ask somebody off, that doesn't know you from Adam, then that could be a totally different situation.
well, you got to remember, the first thing I can tell you the fact, most candidates have big ego. So if their egos are fed, they're going to believe whatever their ego is being fed
Well, they
by.
got to have a big ego in order to feel that
I
they can beat
understand that.
everybody else.
But you have to, truth to power.
Okay.
Okay. So the bottom line is my experience has been the reason why I've had some people come to me to do a poll or what my poll is. The fact is because I'm not a candidate. Have I worked for candidates? Yes, I've done over 4,000 polls in my life. I've worked for 400 candidates and campaigns. So I'm relatively confident in what I'm doing. But the point being is if a poll is done for a candidate and it's done poorly, it could be being misled. Okay, so it has to be done correct. And there's a lot of, for Mitt Romney, when he ran for president, his date was purposely weighted to make him look better than he was, and he didn't realize at election that the polls were being changed to make him look good so he could keep raising money. And so, yes, you have to be sure that the person you're working with, they follow the procedures, the scientific methods of sample design and the representation of the poll. Because if they're not, then you're going to be misinformation. It's only as good as the data collected.
So what is your advice? Since, like you say, you've worked with candidates in the past.
Yes.
What's your advice to somebody, let's say, that's running in this election or maybe running in an upcoming election? What do you advise candidates to do? Like, what is the Ed Sarpolis rule of candidacy that you would recommend to candidates?
Well, first of all, the first thing in Detroit is, in Detroit, unless you earn the right to run, people aren't going to vote for you. People want to feel you, touch you, hear you, and your issues. You know that you grew up in the city. So the first thing I tell candidates, if I'm running against Mayor Duggan, I said, have you done with Mayor Duggan 2 years out? Been in everybody's home, reach out to all the seniors and all the churches. Mike Duggan didn't start, the year of the election. He works going around the city. Detroiters want to see and touch you and feel you, okay? When I remember working with Coleman Young when we were doing some work on who to represent. There's a lot. I remember Coleman Young says, well, this white candidate, he says he's going to win because he works our community. I remember Curtis Hertel family, okay? The Leland family, except for problems with Gabe Ridley back. Coleman understood the fact these people were in the community, they reached out to the community, and despite all this power, he could not defeat them at the ballot because they had worked the community. So bottom line, just don't do a Facebook page, just don't do a web page. It still comes down to brass tacks, walking door to door, doing these meetings, going to churches where you can, going to senior buildings, and then you may want to do a poll to see if you've been effective in reaching out to the voters? Has your name improved? Have you reached out? So it's basically, you still have to do the hard work. The poll just tells you how far along in your plan have you moved along.
So it gives you the recipe
Yes.
of what you need to adhere
What
to.
you need to do.
when you are running
Matter
for
of
that
fact, when you and
office.
I talked before, we said Anthony Adams, in fact, his problem is lack of name recognition. Not the fact that he's not a good candidate. The fact not enough people know who he is.
So the advice that you would probably give to somebody like him would be to get out in the community
More often.
and going to the community meetings, having little coffee hours or
Yes.
something like that to invite folks.
More
to come in.
people, and start
block club meetings
right.
and things like that.
For example, I know during the last year election with Brenda Jones running against Rashida Tlaib in the primary, I said for a year and a half that she wasn't going to win. She said, "How do you know?" Because I says, in all the polls I've done, her name recognition never went up. She never did the door-to-door. She never did outreach outside the community. I could track from the polling where she had been. I found for a year and a half she wasn't being anywhere.
Okay.
So it tells me what is going on in the campaign.
Got you. Okay.
It's like watching your kid. You know where they are. You talk to the neighbors. Where have they been?
Yeah. Now, just we're about to wrap up, but in our closing minute, if somebody wants to contact you, one of the candidates wants to get your information so that they could go and they can hire you or commission you,
Or get my
to do a poll
advice.
for
You don't
them,
have
or
to
get
hire
your
my
advice. Can you tell our listening audience and our viewing audience?
Yes, I'd love this. My name is Ed Serpolis from Target Insight. My phone number is 517-927-9776. 517-927-9776. I do take phone calls. I do answer them. Some candidates have already called me, and I do have people in the community that call me just to find out what's going on as a pulse. They don't even running as a candidate. They just want to know what's going on.
Well, one thing I will say that whenever I contact you, you answer the phone.
I
So
do.
That's a good thing, right?
Yes.
there. Ed, we got to definitely have you back on again, especially in the upcoming months before
Look
the
forward to
primary
it.
as well as the general election. Again, my special guest today, Ed Serpolis, Target Insight Marketing, and I'm really appreciative of him coming all the way from Lansing to be on the show today. So definitely have a safe trip back. But if you'd like to get in contact with Valerie Lockhart to advertise in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper, our sponsor, you can contact Ms. Lockhart at area code 313-457-5944. You can pick up a copy of the Kroger supermarkets have the information on their sites, as well as you could go pick up a copy of the Detroit Native Sun newspaper at other areas besides the Kroger supermarkets. Again, thank you to Ed Serpolis, my special guest today. I want to tell everybody, I hope you had a great and safe holiday. Make sure you let somebody know you love them. Peace. Have a good day.